Are you feeling overwhelmed with all the watercolor supplies out there? After 3 years and many unnecessary purchases, I've narrowed it down to the essentials that I use 80% of the time. If you want to save both time and money, this video is for you. Hey there, I'm Antonio. 3 years ago, I started my own watercolor journey. In this channel, we'll be exploring watercolors together and turning complex techniques into easy to follow steps. Before we start, let's make one thing clear. Materials don't really matter. Watercolors is a motor skill which requires practice to get good at them. However, some supplies can make our lives easier. All right, let's start with number one, which is sponges, towels, or paper towels. I believe that this comes down to personal preference, but paper towels tend to give you more control because they actually soak up all the water and then you actually have to replace them. Then you have towels and then sponges. These are the cheapest supplies that you can experiment with, so you just have to find what works for you. Next up is paints. You can use watercolor pencils, you can use tubes, or you can use pans. I personally prefer tubes because you can mix stronger colors, whereas if you have pans that are not really good, reactivating the paint on them, it can be a nightmare. If you're wondering which colors you should choose, I would go for the three primaries. I mean, this is my portable watercolor kit that I take everywhere, and this is enough for 80% of my painting, which is yellow, blue, and two reds. Next up is water containers. I mean, that could be just anything. You can have a jar, you can have a cup of water. I mean, this is really nothing to really spend a lot of time in. Now here's a tough one, watercolor paper. You can have notebooks or you can have pads. The non-negotiable thing about watercolor paper is that it has to be 100% cotton paper. If it's not, you're gonna have a very hard time painting the most easy things. It is worth the money to invest in good paper because that is where the watercolor really comes and shines. If the canvas where you're painting is not the best quality, you're just gonna be fighting the canvas all the time, and that's just not a pleasant experience. You'll also need a palette. I wouldn't recommend anything bigger than this. Most of the time, bigger palettes are just more cumbersome, but I find that this kind of palette is very nice and portable, as well as it can keep your paints very fresh for next use, either later or the next day. The last one is where all your money can go down the drain, and that is brushes. You have to be painting for a long time to actually understand what you will need for brushes. So I recommend starting with only 3 brushes. One big mop brush. This is a 14 size brush. A round number 10 imitation hair synthetic brush, and a synthetic, also number 10, round brush. Literally 80% of the things I've painted with have been with these 3 brushes, as well as with those 3 colors that I mentioned. There's so much money that we spend on unnecessary things, and we can only look back and think, oh, I shouldn't have bought that. So don't be that person. Now that you're nice and geared up, it is time for basics. Next week, I'll be sharing 3 very easy to learn watercolor techniques every beginner should know. If you found this video useful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. If you got any questions or any thoughts about today's topic, please leave it in the comments below. I'm always down in the comments ready for a chat. Thanks for joining me today, and until next week, bye.